Hello viewers and welcome to another episode of Excel Learning. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about an interesting topic which is making pivot tables more powerful. Yes, you heard that right. Normally pivot tables are in itself a very powerful tool. It gives you a comprehensive tool to analyze. However, it breaks the flow or we need to do a lot of workarounds when we have data across multiple sheets. So today we are going to talk about how to overcome this challenge and have a combined pivot table using Power Pivot and no VBA, that is no code solution. So it is something that anyone who is using Microsoft Office 2016 and above can easily deploy in his or her system. So now let's jump to the problem statement and then we'll come to the solution of it. Here we will have two different scenarios and I'll talk about both the scenarios first and then we will go into the detailed solution for each scenario. Scenario 1 can be that you have got data with similar column headers across two sheets. So for example, in the first sheet, we have the data for January 20 month with the same columns. Here are 7 columns. And in month 2, that is another sheet, you have February 22 data with the same 7 columns. So here, in order to create a combined pivot table, let's understand this conceptually first. What we require is to combine the data in one place so that you have a table which has February or let's say January over here and February plotted over here, so that once we have a combined table, this combined table can then be used as the data source for pivot tables and that can serve our purpose. So this is the scenario 1 when we have same columns, however data in different sheets wherein a combination is required first so that a combined pivot table can be prepared. Now let us talk about the second scenario. In the second scenario, we have data in one sheet, that is the data of the respective transactions. However, the master data exists in another worksheet. So for example, here the product code is mentioned at HTT, BT, ST, so on and so forth, and the description of the product code is given in another worksheet which is over here. So here the description of HTT is, for example, hatchback toy, so on and so forth. So here the point is, if we just think about logically how we would have solved it, assuming we do not know Power Pivot, is we would first do a VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, something like that, bring the product description over here and then load it into a pivot table. So instead of using the traditional method of using a VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, and then every time new data is inserted, we need to be cautious whether this is updated or not. We will use a different approach and see how the results can be dynamically achieved in a faster and more efficient way. So these are the two scenarios we are going to talk about. Now let us first talk about scenario 1. So for scenario 1, what are we going to need? We need to first combine these two tables which is appearing in first worksheet of this, which is the month 1 worksheet, and the second worksheet of month 2 worksheets. So these are the two data points that we are going to combine. So let's see how to do that. To do that, what we are going to first do is, it's important to understand this part, we need to convert the respective data into a table. Now table is a nomenclature that is widely used in Excel and it serves 2-3 purposes. One is the data is expandable in a table. So for example, if I add new rows, it automatically gets updated in the data range and I do not have to go to the pivot table and manually change references again and again if a data source is updated with new data. Second advantage is it gives it a structure and quick formatting. The third advantage it helps us work with Power Pivot or data model, which are both used as synonyms. So Power Pivot can be used as a proxy name for data model and so on for vice versa as well. So the first step is select the data, convert it into a table by using the shortcut Ctrl+T. Because I have already converted it into a table, hence you can see this option activated over here, which is called the table design. So the moment you see a table design field activated over here, it means that the data has been converted into a table. Now inside the table design, we can comfortably change the name. For example, here I want the name to be table 1 scenario 1. That is the name. Similarly, we go over to scenario 2. We select the data, press Ctrl+T. You have to press this option, Ctrl+T, plus T. This converts the data into a table. Then we go over to the table design and we change the name. So here we have the default name as table 2. We will change it to table 2 scenario 1. I think that gives us first both the data sources handy. Now what is the next step that we are going to do? In the next step, we need to basically add this to Power Query, which is an intermediary cleanup step. So what we are going to do for that, go to Data tab. Inside Data tab, you simply click on this icon, which shows from data or table. Mind it, you might not be seeing this same icon in your computer because you might be on a different version of Excel. For example, I am using Office 365 and hence I am seeing this icon readily available. In case you do not see this option, do not worry, just go to Get Data. Inside Get Data, you will definitely get the option of from table oblique range. Select that option, and once you do that, it will be loaded into Power Query. So I'll just select this. Once I click on it, it will take some time, maybe few seconds depending upon the size of the data, and it will open the Power Query screen. Now this is where part of the magic happens. So we have the data here, it's loaded. It has loaded now table 2 scenario 1. So in this, rest of the things look okay. We'll just go to the month and convert the data type, and we'll convert the data type to a maybe a date. I think that looks better. So it shows February date. Similarly, what we are going to do is, now this gives us table number 2 because that is what we had added. Simply right click on the main table over here and you create a duplicate of it. And I'll tell you why. The moment you create a duplicate, now you rename the table to a table 1. Now you would be wondering why table 1 is renamed here while the data source still says table 2. It's a simple hack. We'll go to the source step on the right hand side, and in the formula bar you will simply change the name from table 2 to table 1, because remember we had named the ranges or named the tables in such a way that they are symmetrical. So we know table 1 is for January, table 2 is for February. So I think we have both the tables now. Now here comes the magic step. We are going to have another step called append queries, which is append queries as new. Inside that step, we just need to select two tables, which is table 1 and the table 2, and we click on OK. The moment you do that, all the data from Jan and Feb is combined over here. Then here lies the magic part. So we will name it as combined table. So that gives it comprehensibility, combined table. Now we close the Power Query screen, and the moment we close the Power Query screen, it loads all the three tables. So in fact, as a matter of fact, I do not require all the three tables. So what I'll do is I'll simply delete this sheet which I do not require. I will also delete this sheet which I do not require, but the combined table is something which I require and I'll keep it. You can change the color combination and so on and so forth to make it look cleaner, and that's it. Now we just have all the data available with us and we can use the data in a pivot table. Now here lies another part I would like to mention. Now here again there are two approaches. You can now select this data and make a pivot table, or there is a smarter way to do it. You just right click on it, go to load to. Inside that you directly load the data into a pivot table report instead of having it first pasted as a plain data and then converting it into a pivot table report. So I will go to a new worksheet, and yes, the moment I do that, I have a pivot table report over here, and in that, just to give you a summary, I have the month, and if I plot the profit loss, for example, it shows Jan and Feb both, and it is now expandable by any cut that I want. So for example, if I want it by salesman, I can do that. If I want it by, let's say, a region, I can do that, so on and so forth. So this is the first approach. So this screen that you're seeing is basically a combination, that is in effect a result of using Power Query to append both the tables together, get the data in one place, and then use the combined data in a pivot table. Now here in the pivot table, it works as a traditional pivot table. You also have the options of adding slicers. You have the option of adding a timeline in case your data contains date stamps. For example, here we have the month, so on and so forth. And you can also add a pivot chart, which works equally well as a normal pivot report. So I think that is the scenario one that we talked about. And in this combined table, the first sheet that got created on the combined table, we actually do not require that because we directly converted it into a pivot table, and hence you may go ahead and delete this sheet. Nothing changes. Your data, your final output remains in the combined table. Let me rename it as pivot scenario 1. I think that gives an output. Now let us talk about scenario 2. In scenario 2, let me remind, we have again one data table, which is basically the transaction table, and then there is one master table which has the description to the different codes which exist in the transaction table. Here again we are going to use a similar approach, just that here we are going to actually apply the power pivot magic, which we did not apply in the first part. In the first part we only used Power Query to combine the data and give us a consolidated output, using which a pivot table was created from the Power Query itself. However, in the scenario 2 we are going to use data model as a factor to create relationships and avoid XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP mess altogether and make it completely dynamic. Now let's see how to do the same. So again, the first step is selecting your data, pressing of Ctrl+T to convert your data into a table. Now the moment you do that, you again start seeing this table design field got activated, and inside the table design field you then can go inside and rename the table. So for example, here I have mentioned it as table data scenario 2. Similarly, in the master, again you select the data, press Ctrl+T. This gives you the conversion into a table wherein you see this table design field activated. Inside that you go and rename the table name. I have already named it as table master, and hence it is appearing this way. Now what is the next step? Once you have the table renamed, then comes the next crucial step, wherein we are going to go to the data tab and we are going to define a relationship between the data table, which is the transactions table, and the master table. And how we are going to do that? We are going to click on this icon and click on relationships. Again, I am using a different version of Excel. In case you are using different version of Excel, the relationships might appear. So you need to refer to this symbol, which you will definitely find under the data tab. It might not appear under the same menu, but it will definitely appear and you need to click on that. So now I'll click on that. The moment I click on relationship, a screen similar to this will open on your laptops or computers. Inside new, we just need to go to which workbook, or rather which table we want to select. We want to select the data for scenario 2 and the column name its product code. And how do we want to relate it to? We want to relate it to the table master data and the product code column. Now 2 points to note here. One is the column names need not be same. It is a coincidence that the column names are same. Even if they are different, it is completely okay. It's not a mandate to have the same column name structure. Second piece is the table which is the master should not have rows which are repeated. For example, HTT cannot appear 2 times in this table, because the primary rule of a relationship is that the master table has to contain one value only once. So that is a very crucial thing that we need to keep in mind, and many a times when you are creating data models, this is a common challenge that you'll face. So in order to overcome that, always make sure that your master table is having only one value per row. It's not or rather it's not having any duplicate values in the master column. I think that's very important to keep in mind. So we do this. Now the moment we do this, it shows that the relationship has been created. However, visibly you do not see anything that has changed. The moment we click on the data relationships, something has changed in the background which is not yet visible. Now let's understand where finally we will get that as a visibility. So in order to see that, we are first going to go to insert, and we are going to insert a pivot table from data model. Because in the backend, the moment we created a relationship, a data model got activated with this relation, and we will go to, okay, we want it in a new worksheet, and that's it. Now you see there are 4 tables which are appearing. So we will add this table, which is scenario 2, in the active work, in the active section. So we'll click on active, and we will also select table master, and we'll show it in the active tab. So the moment we do that, both the tables are now combined. So what we're going to do, we are going to simply take, in order to test whether it's working, we're going to take their product description, and we are going to take the net sales as well as the net profit. Now you see it has basically combined both the tables, avoided the complete mess of using Power Pivot or rather Excel lookup, VLOOKUP, etc. And it has given you the output which is going to save you lots of hours, especially when you are dealing with huge amount of data. So here we had rows which were countable on fingers, but in real life you would have data which is running into hundreds of thousands of rows. In fact, I have dealt personally with data which has actually ran into 20 lakh rows. Now that's again a question, that how can 20 lakh rows fit in Excel? But yes, they can. So in those scenarios it comes in very handy, because you avoid the total mess of XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, which makes your Excel sheets messy and slow. Here you have complete freedom to just create one relationship, and based on that relationship it takes you far. So that's the video for today. We covered two scenarios: scenario one wherein we appended the data and created a pivot table, and scenario two wherein we created a relationship and actually used the data model feature or the Power Pivot model in order to create a combined pivot table. Share it with someone who may need it. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you like the content.